Good afternoon. We are speaking to you from the Riga conference on a very important and critical and controversial topic affecting Latvia, its neighbors, and much of Europe. Until recently, communications, the sharing of information, were regarded as a natural strength of liberal pluralistic democracies. In fact, the broadcasting of honest and open information was seen with justice as one of the factors that led to the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989. But it's unmistakable that over the past several years, the Russian Federation has devoted enormous resources to establishing influence, and some would say dominance, over the information space. The word itself, which has crept into our lexicon, is in fact a direct translation of the Russian term informaционное пространство. And this policy not only affects conventional television broadcasts through news, through drama, through documentary films, and through high culture, it also now affects increasingly the internet and social media. In fact, the information dimension is now seen as central and critical to all levels of military operation, and there is now an enormous body of theoretical writing and practice about informaционная война and its integration into conflict and shaping the perceptions and the responses of opponents. So we are here really to answer three basic questions. Is Russian information policy really a challenge to liberal pluralistic democracies, or is it misperceived, misunderstood, and exaggerated in its impact? Secondly, is Russia's information policy a challenge to the security of liberal democracies, particularly on the periphery of the Russian Federation? And finally, if this is so, how do we best respond? Here to discuss these three questions and others are Dr. Nadezhda Arbatova, who is head of the Department of European Political Studies in IMEMO, the Institute of World Economy and International Relations in Moscow, and Andrei Illarionov, who is a senior fellow of the Cato Institute Center for Global Liberty and Prosperity, and finally me, your moderator, James Sherr, Associate Fellow of Chatham House. Nadia, I wonder if I could start with you and ask you over the course of perhaps 5 minutes to develop your thoughts about the specific contributions, advantages that Russia brings to this area of information, and the motivations behind what we see as Russian information policy today.
Thank you. First of all, I would like to start with one preliminary remark. I don't mind against the wording propaganda machine. And in many countries, I would say that propaganda machine exists in any country whatsoever. It's not only in Russia. And propaganda is a tool aimed at shaping public opinion on certain issues. And it can have both the negative connotation, depending on the issue, and the positive one. So there is nothing scary in this wording. I don't like how our mass media covers the Ukrainian conflict. It is very aggressive, it is biased, it is primitive, and it gives black and white pictures of this conflict. But I remember that I was in the United States during the Yugoslav conflict, and I remember how the US mass media covered the Yugoslav, almost the same, the black and white pictures, not to bother people with much thinking on their own. And the same we see now in Russia. So my point is that when it comes to the military conflict, to the war, propaganda machine is used for these purposes. The problem is that Russia and the West view this conflict from very different ideological lenses. I don't know whether I have time to describe how Russia views this conflict and how the West, but these two views are incompatible. They cannot be reduced to a common denominator. And answering the question which was raised in our topic, what will stop Russia's propaganda machine, I would say, if we refer this to the conflict in Ukraine, peace in Ukraine will stop this war, information war.
Let me, without in any way challenging your point, which I fully agree with, that Russia and the West are looking at imagine they are seeing fundamentally different realities in Ukraine.
Absolutely.
And perhaps beyond that, and fully accept that. Without in this discussion going back over all of the salient differences in the Ukrainian conflict, is there not something, at least one thing, two things that distinguish the Russian information space and its external influence from that of the West? The first, the most obvious, but I think less interesting one, is the role that the state plays in Russia.
Yes, of course.
But the second is more interesting, and that is that the information policy is officially part of a broader policy which is called a humanitarian and civilization policy, which is really about shaping identities and how people outside Russia, particularly Slavic people, understand their history, their culture, and their identities. There is no analog to this in any form of Western broadcast or print media that I can discern. Isn't this a very important difference?
First of all, I think that our mass media is working mostly for domestic consumption. I don't think that, our journalists hope to persuade people abroad in all their stories. So it is mostly for domestic consumption, to bring support, to shape public opinion, to support Putin's policy vis-à-vis in Ukraine. So,
but you know, RTA Planeta is not for domestic consumption. All the Russian television programs I watch, the media I read abroad, is dedicated to what is going on abroad. But let's accept for the moment your fundamental point. Andrei, for the moment, apart from asking about your own perception of this core issue and what you've just heard from Nadia, how serious do you think this challenge really is? And what are its security implications, if any?
No, I think it's very serious, and this is. I think first of all about terminology. I think the terminology "information war" is absolutely relevant, and we are dealing with the issue of information war for a number of years, and we're dealing with this issue not necessarily related to Ukrainian aggression against Ukraine from the Russian regime. It's this information war is waged for a long time. At different moments, the goal of the information war was different. At some point, there was initial stages. The Chechens were. There was a particular time that the oligarchs were enemies. There were Georgians. Now Ukrainians, all the time Americans, and some kind of Westerners, and also some kind of gay culture, multiculturalism in Europe, and many others. So that is why there are many goals at different moments of time, depending on the orders from the center. The attention is switched to particular enemies. Definitely, it has as a target not only domestic people but also international audience. Russia Today broadcasts in English, in French, in Spanish, in Arabic. I believe it will be in German very soon. So it's a very international operation. It's a total war because information space mentioned by you does not have limits, unlike the conventional war. And from this point of view, information war is one of the most important, maybe the most important type of war or chapter of wars in the so-called Fourth World War or hybrid war that is being waged by Kremlin. Because unlike the previous types of our conventional war, which is aimed on, let's say, killing or defeating the enemy on the field and the conquering the particular part of territory, information war is having goal to capture whole territory without any limits. All territories for all people who are speaking on this particular language. So that is why this is probably the first time the real total war, because as a goal, it has everybody who speaks and thinks and able to receive information in this particular language. So that is why the challenge is incredibly important. It's very serious.
Okay. We have very little time left, but let me just raise another question with both of you. The military parallel and dimension does exist here, as Russians have pointed out officially. But if you look at Russia's military approach, the whole Russian military tradition, and the political tradition as well, of achieving offensive objectives, most of it is about exploiting real vulnerabilities. And my question is, haven't many countries, beginning with Ukraine, created vulnerabilities for themselves? For example, by not having, over years, developed credible media outlets that can broadcast to Russian people in the Russian language, and matching the range and quality of Russian broadcasts with broadcasts in the Russian language, and allowing Russia to dictate and create what has been a fairly unimportant conflict in many countries, beginning with Ukraine, about which language you speak. What is our culpability in this? Have we not made Russia's task easier?
Yes, certainly there is a problem, but frankly speaking, not every country is able to develop, for example, this information capacity to the level that is being developed, let's say, in Russia. For example, Hollywood is producing movies that are being watched by the whole world. Not many other countries are able to produce movies of similar quality, some kind of popularity, maybe French cinema, maybe some other countries, but not every country. And that's a real challenge. Not every country is able to produce such quality information product that will be consumed by anybody.
You know, a lot of it is pashlost. It's just, vulgarity and rubbish. And in fact, the dominance of this kind of entertainment has been for years, not just in Russia, but in France, seen as an unacceptable attack on French and European cultural values. Nadia, as we have very little time left, you, as somebody who has been over the years very dispassionate and distant and critical when necessary of the official positions in Russia, let me ask you this. If these distortions and the current policy did not exist in Russia, and Russia was led by elites that looked at the outside world in a different way, in a more integrated, more cooperative way, what changes do you think would be required in the entire direction of Russian media policy?
Well, first of all, I would like to say that the more civilized politicians, the more civilized their propaganda. And I don't believe in Maidan in Russia. I don't believe in revolutions in Russia. I believe only in gradual but consistent evolution of our political elite, changes from above.
Thank you very much. Very stimulating, penetrating comments in a far too brief discussion about an extremely important topic, which we need to take seriously. And I can, I think, express the wish of all of you that this type of discussion in Latvia and other countries continue in a civilized way in other forums. Thank you both very much, and thank you for watching.